What's up, guys? Welcome back to Crime Talk 369. And today we're going to be doing a reaction to a case, Kalief Rou Rauter. It was a kid that got accused of doing a crime he didn't commit, you know. And this just goes to show you you can be innocent, and just because you got an accusation, you can sit in jail for years just waiting on a trial because your case keeps getting pushed back. You don't got to be guilty to end up in jail. You really don't. And once you're in the system, sometimes it don't matter what the truth is. Most people think jail equals guilty. That's not always the case. And I try to tell that a lot on my channel. I did another interview with a guy who was convicted of a case where he was convicted of kidnapping, and he didn't even know the person who accused him of it. And that was a crazy story by itself. Fake accusation, it happens all the time. You can literally get an argument with your girlfriend. She can go to the police station and say you did something, and they will come and lock you up. And you got to prove you didn't do it. It could take months. But yeah, this the subject was brought up by a member on the channel, Hound Mom. Shout out to Hound Mom.
Kalief Rou Rauter.
Kalief Rou Rauter.
Kalief Rou Rauter.
Kalief Rou Rauter
was arrested at 16, stealing a backpack in a backpack.
in jail on Rikers.
Solitary confinement. Torture.
In the course of 3 years on Rikers Island, trapped there without having been convicted of a crime.
We turn now to another tragic story about a young man who learned the hard way about the troubles plaguing America's criminal justice system. Kalief Rou Rauter was arrested at 16, never convicted of a crime, never had a trial, but spent more than 3 years in one of the most violent jails in the country.
It's crazy. Well, you already know I'm doing a reaction, so I gotta pause it every once in a while. I have to. I gotta say something. But anyways, I heard about this story before I went to prison. Matter of fact, yeah, Jay-Z, he did a documentary or something on it. I don't think this is the documentary. I already know what happens, but yeah, this story is crazy.
Believe this young man, his story will save a lot of lives. What was done to him was a huge injustice, and I think people will see his story and realize, like, man, this is going on. This is not like one case that happened. This is happening a lot for people, especially places where I come from, in the boroughs and Marcy projects and Bronx and Brooklyn and all these places.
Man, I couldn't imagine living in New York City. I couldn't imagine. I know before I got arrested, there was this case that happened down there. It was two teenage boys. They were walking through New York City at nighttime, and I think there was a gang riding around looking for the ops. You know how they be. Anyways, they called out a gang sound, and the boys, they thought they were just playing around. They did the call back, and that let the people know that's who they were looking for. So they started chasing them. And the one boy got away, but the other boy, he ran into, what do you call it, a deli or something, one of the convenience stores. He ran in there. There was like 5 of them. They ran in after him with machetes and everything, and they sat there and killed him in front of everybody. And the sad thing about it, the kid, he was going behind the cashier, and he was sitting there he was begging them, please don't let him come and get me. Don't let him come get me. And the cashier was pushing him out because he didn't want. He thought, he was going to be the harmless way. He was like, you got to get out of here. Get out of here. Go. Just pushing him to the wolves. That case right there let me know, being in the city ain't no joke at all. Matter of fact, that'd be a good one to do next. Look at that story.
Kalief Rou Rauter was born on May 25th, 1993, in the Bronx, New York. He was the youngest of 7 biological children. His mother was suffering from drug addiction at the time of his birth, and as soon as he was born, he was given to Child Protective Services. Khalif's mother became a part of the crack epidemic of the 80s and early 90s that absolutely destroyed countless black communities throughout America. His father was never around, and ultimately he would be adopted by a woman named Vanita Browder when he was just a baby. She was married to a man named Everett Browder, but he didn't play much of a father figure role to Khalif growing up. Over the years, Vanita Browder had raised 35 children, including fostered, adopted, and her own biological kids. The family lived in a 2-story brick house on Prospect Avenue near the Bronx Zoo. It was tight living quarters, but Khalif and his siblings still made the best of it, and they had a very close-knit family. Khalif was described as a good kid growing.
It's crazy, kids that grow up in big families like that. Like I got 13 brothers and sisters, and it's crazy keeping up with everybody. It really is. But when you grow up in a family that big, you don't get personal time with mom and dad or whatever.
Up,
Everybody
smart,
got favorites,
outgoing, and never caused any problems for his mom. Although in the summer of 2009, Khalif would be accused by police officers of stealing a bakery truck and crashing it into a stationary car. He was charged with third-degree grand larceny and pled guilty in court, although he would later recant his statements, saying that he was just a bystander, not the one joyriding. He was registered as a youthful offender and sentenced to probation. But despite the alleged juvenile delinquency, Khalif continued to do good in school. He attended New Day Academy, where the staff described him as a very intelligent and thoughtful young man with a very bright future ahead of him.
Hi, my name is Dion Browder, and I'm the brother of Kalief Rou Rauter.
My name is Hakeem Browder. Kalief Router is my youngest brother.
I'm Nicole Browder. I'm Khalif's sister.
My name is Kamal Browder, and the relationship to Kalief Browder is he's my younger brother.
Khalif means a lot to me.
And that last one looked just like him.
To me, he's the reason why I got my GED. He's the reason why I want to go to school. Then I want to get into acting and directing and doing my own movies. So without him, I don't know where I'll be at. He's like my inspiration. He's the reason why I want to do everything.
Khalif meant the world to me. He was my younger brother, my inspiration.
But the potential and promise that he possessed would be snatched away from him in a tragic turn of events. Khalif and his friend would be arrested on Arthur Avenue near East 186th Street in the Belmont section of the Bronx. It happened on May 15th of 2010. 911 received a call from a man named Raul, stating that his brother Manuel had just been robbed by 2 black men as he left work. The police officers began to frisk Khalif and his friend, questioning them about having any stolen property. Khalif told the officers that he had no idea what they were talking about and that him and his friend didn't rob anyone. But his accuser Raul was in the back seat of the cop car, and he positively identified Khalif as the one who robbed his brother. By this time, his story had changed, though. When he initially called 911, he said,
That's crazy. I'll be telling people all the time. That's why when I be talking about prison, and there'll be people saying, "Oh, I ain't never been to jail." Anybody can go to jail. Anybody can. Just an accusation. Like they didn't do nothing wrong. Anybody can go to jail. Matter of fact, you would think, the people that ain't never been to jail, they think jail's full of monsters with tattoos over their face. It's really not. It's ordinary people, like your next door neighbor, all that. Regular people.
Said that somebody tried to rob his brother. Now he was saying Kalief Browder did rob his brother of numerous valuable items, including a camera, $700, a credit card, and an iPod Touch. But Khalif's pockets were empty and didn't have any of the stolen items. This is when the man known only as Raul would once again change his story, now saying that the robbery happened on May 8th, even though when he called 911 on May 15th of 2010, he made it seem as if the robbery happened just hours prior. Raul told the police that Khalif and his friend had probably already gotten rid of the evidence of the stolen property, and despite the discrepancies that he had in his story, the police still believed him anyways and decided to arrest Khalif and his friend. He protested the entire drive, asking the officers why were they doing this. They told him that he would just get processed and then he would get released. Khalif was taken to the 48th precinct in the Bronx, where he was fingerprinted and placed in a holding.
That's one thing I learned. When you're in interrogation room, or when you're talking to the police in general, they don't have to tell the truth to you. Before I was going through the system, I always thought that. I was dumb. I always thought, oh yeah, the police say something, it's got to be right. No, they can lie to you. They can catch you up in lies and all that. They play mind games and all that.
Cell, then processed that central booking. He still believed that the police would realize that this was all just a big misunderstanding and that he would be released into the care of his mother.
I didn't rob nobody.
You didn't.
No.
One day I'll get YouTube Prime.
911 operator 1719, where's emergency?
Two male black guys. They took my brother book bag.
There was a guy saying that I robbed him.
But 17 hours after his arrest, Khalif wasn't back at home. He was in an interrogation room talking to a prosecutor and a detective. They interrogated him relentlessly, but he continued to tell them the same story, that he didn't rob anyone, that he didn't do anything. Despite not having any evidence against him, the very next day, prosecutors would charge Khalif with grand larceny, robbery, and assault. During this time, New York was only one of 2 states that allowed 16-year-olds to be charged as adults. His bail was set at $3,000, but his family didn't have the money, although they were able to borrow $900 from a neighbor. Khalif's family went to a bail bondsman for the rest, but when they went to post it, they were denied, being told that his probation officer had placed a violation hold on him, meaning that even if...
Oh, that's crazy. That one lie flipped his whole life upside down. People think that you just get arrested and, you go to court the next week. No, you sit in jail until, your day can be getting pushed back. I think he sat in there for years.
If he did post bail, he still wouldn't be released. This meant that Khalif would now have to wait until his court date to regain his freedom. But in the meantime, at only 16 years old, he was headed to Rikers Island. Some call it Torture Island or Gladiator School, but most of his former inmates refer to it simply as Hell on Earth.
Rikers Island, New York's massive jail complex.
Hey, you see the buildings right there? That's what I'll be talking about when I'm telling my stories. Like, they'll have the building right there, and then they'll have wings. Like, you see the building have like 4 wings to it. Though each of those are like pods.
Complex just a few miles from Midtown Manhattan and scene of a humanitarian crisis.
What are some words you'd use to describe Rikers Island?
Hell. Plain and simple. Hell.
I hope they show that one part in the documentary I seen. Not this one. I hope they show it though. Man, they show when he got to Rikers Island, I think he had a gang after him or something, and like there was like 20 people after him, and they had it on video, and like they were running through, trying to get to him and everything. He was out in the hallway. He ran in a room and everything. I hope they show it. That happened to this guy right here.
The conditions at Rikers Island are now being described as a humanitarian crisis.
They say it's not safe for corrections officers or inmates.
There wasn't access to showers. They were not wearing clean clothes.
Another inmate death on Rikers Island.
There has been a lot of talk about criminal justice reform in America, and it would be hard to find a place more in need of reform than Rikers Island, the most important jail in New York City. Located in the middle of the East River, Rikers holds about 10,000 inmates. It's a volatile mix. Some have been convicted of minor crimes, but as many as 80% are awaiting trial. Many are there because they can't make bail.
But it didn't mistakenly end up on an island.
Place, it's got to be bad there. I can already tell. Gangs probably run that place because New York, they're big on gangs up there. So I can only imagine how it is in their jail.
The East River, and it didn't accidentally become one of the biggest correctional facilities in the entire world. Long before the mistreatment of Kalief Rou Rauter, the system of injustice had been in motion for hundreds of years in New York City.
What the hell? This whole time I couldn't even see what you guys were saying. That's crazy.
1600s, a Dutch colonist named Abraham Ryken took possession of the island. Their family last name would be changed to Riker, and the island would become a part of their history for decades to come. The origins of what happened to Khalif can be traced all the way back to the 18th century in New York. A man who was the great-great-grandson of Abraham Ryken, named Richard Riker, had control of the island in the 1800s. He was a very powerful judge and a huge proponent of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, a federal law
Yeah, I
that
think
made it legal to capture
I ain't gonna
runaway.
lie. I think they going a little too far back. I'm only interested in this guy's case. What the hell? Why are we going back in the 1600s and shit?
Slaves and returned them to bondage on plantations in the South. But contrary to popular belief, there was numerous places in the North that played a huge role in the slave trade. The first commodities ever sold on Wall Street was human beings, black people who were taken from Africa against their will and being sold into bondage, creating billions of dollars in revenue and setting the foundation of America. One man who made a fortune in this market was Richard Riker. He became known for using his power as a judge to enact the Fugitive Slave Act, even if it was illegal. He made deals with slave catchers, allowing them to capture black people even if they were free, sending them to plantations in the South and throughout the North. There was a time in the 1800s where the only state that had more slaves than South Carolina was New York. One of the primary
I don't know. I see. This is the part I don't like about stuff like this, because we talking about that guy not because he's black, but because of what happened to him. It could have happened to a white guy. It could happen to a Spanish guy. I think it's just a documentary. This is probably his style. I should have probably looked at it a little bit more before I picked it. But yeah, it can happen to a white guy, a black guy. Just because he was black. I don't think that had. I mean, it probably did have a part to play in it, but you can get accused. Anybody can get accused.
reasons for this is the actions of Richard Riker towards black people as a judge. In the 1860s, the island was used by soldiers during the Civil War, especially for black Union soldiers who were being prepared to go fight on the front lines down in Louisiana, under the belief that if they fought for the Union, they would be able to gain their freedom, live a better life, and abolish slavery once and for all. And by 1884, the island was annexed by the city of New York. It was purchased from the Rikers family for $180,000, or over $5 million in today's money. By 1925, the jails on Welfare Island were completely overpopulated by inmates. That's when the city decided to build a brand new facility on Rikers Island. But the building wouldn't be named just in honor of the Riker family. It was named after the infamous judge Richard Riker, who often bragged about having the ability to be able to lock up free black people and send them back into slavery. The cruel practice was supposed to come to an end after the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation signed by President Abraham Lincoln, but it wasn't
Hey,
done
that
out
was
of
a good movie.
sympathy or mercy for slaves.
That was a good movie right there. Yeah, I don't really know why he's going this far back. But anyways, that was a good movie. I do remember that movie.
It was done as a military strategy in hopes that the newly freed slaves would defect from the rebellious southern states and join the North, increasing their numbers and increasing their chances to defeat the Confederacy. This strategy by Abraham Lincoln would pay off, and black soldiers would play a pivotal role in the Union winning the Civil War. As a result, slavery was abolished in 1865, but it only gave birth to a much more nefarious law, the 13th Amendment, which outlawed human chattel being the property of another individual, but didn't outlaw slavery when it came to being a punishment for a crime, creating a system that will cause absolute destruction in the black community for generations to come. And now, over 100 years later, that same system is going up against Kalief Rou Rauter.
Yo, what's up, bro? Wait, is this that new?
When you read the 13th Amendment, that basically was the amendment that broke through slavery and freed the men and women who were.
Oh my god. Yeah, I kind of want to skip it. I ain't gonna lie. I kind of do want to skip it. Look at everybody on the left. I want to skip this part. I'm not, man.
Were enslaved at the time. There's a clause in there that allows for the reenslavement of people in the event that they're convicted of a crime.
The kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Millions of dollars will be
to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. Does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now.
Khalif really didn't know what to expect upon his arrival at the infamous Rikers Island. The only thing he could think about was getting a court date ASAP so they could see a mistake had been made and set him free. But he was completely unaware that his nightmare was only beginning.
See, I should have picked another documentary because, man, so much stuff happens to this guy. Man, so much stuff. He's in jail and like he's fighting to get out, and they won't give him a bond. They keep on pushing his date back, and he gets into it with a whole bunch of gangs in there, and he ends up going to the hole. He spends a lot of time in the hole, and like I hope they get into it. You know, I wasn't expecting this documentary to like dive into like racism and stuff because I feel like it's like, you know, attacking two different things. This guy's case and, you know, the history of Rikers Island, I guess. I don't know.
As he checked into the facility, he was placed in a holding cell with one of the most infamous gangs at Rikers Island, the UBN, the United Bloods Nation. Surveillance footage would show corrections officers standing by as Khalif was attacked by dozens of inmates, being punched.
Yo, imagine that. Yo, look at all those people right there. Man, his heart must be racing. I wonder what he did. I can only imagine.
Punched and kicked repeatedly. Eventually, the officers would step in and break it up, giving Khalif enough time to run to the next pod to escape the attack. The holding cell door that he was behind could only be opened by a guard that had to push a button. But the video showed,
man, you know he did something. He probably took somebody off. He had to. If that many people's after you, you had to do some shitball stuff.
One of Khalif's attackers simply kicking on the door a few times and it suspiciously opening, giving the inmates another opportunity to assault Khalif. It seems like this was done on purpose, a welcome to Rikers Island orientation. Khalif didn't have any gang ties or street affiliations, so he was extremely vulnerable inside the jail. Not to mention that he was only 16 years old, still a boy amongst men, but he learned very fast that he would have to grow up quick, and every day he would have to fight for his life, fight for survival. It didn't take Khalif long to figure out that his biggest adversary inside of Rikers wouldn't be other violent inmates or the gangs. It would be those who were hired to protect him, the corrections officers. He stated that they were really the ones who were the most ruthless and powerful gang inside of the jail, and it didn't take much to get on their bad side if you said something wrong.
That's true right there. I ain't gonna lie. If you piss off a CO, you gotta imagine he has all the power over you. Like, you know, he could be at home getting into it with his wife or whatever. He can be in a bad mood, come to jail and take it out on you. You know.
Or even looked at them wrong. You could be getting body slammed and pepper sprayed.
Yeah, I've seen the documentary.
This wasn't just speculation either. On top of the numerous documentaries that have been released showing the brutality of Rikers, video footage would show Khalif being taken out of his cell by a corrections officer. Everything seems to be fine, but in an instance, he's being thrown up against a wall, then slammed to the floor. But it wasn't just about what Khalif was.
He said something to him. He probably said something smart. That's what it was. That's what it was.
Experiencing himself, it was about what he seen happening to others in the infamous jail, seeing inmates being violated, being broken physically and mentally. He had to watch his back at all times and rarely ever got any sleep, being kept up at night by the screams of terror that echoed throughout the building. He would be placed in solitary confinement, a 7x12-foot cell, 23-hour-a-day lockdown. According to Rikers Island officials, they did that because Khalif was constantly being attacked by other inmates, so they did it for his protection. Despite the crazy situation that he had been put in, Khalif still held out hope that the justice system would get it right, that he would go to court, a judge would see the error in his case and set him free. But unfortunately, this wouldn't be the case, and Khalif would go on to have over 31 court dates.
But yo, I think at the end of all this, I think he got paid for all this. I think he became like a rich person. He still self-deleted himself. I do remember that part, but I think he got some money out of this.
All of them being continued by the judge due to different issues. Even though New York is a speedy trial state and Khalif's case should have been resolved within 90 days. But this wasn't uncommon. 80% of the inmates at Rikers was in the same situation, unable to make bail and waiting for a trial. And when they do finally receive a date, a great number of inmates are forced to plead guilty to trumped up charges or run the risk of their time being extended at Rikers Island. Khalif would go on to spend over 1,100 days in jail, with 800 of those days being in solitary confinement. Each day he was losing hope more and more, coming to the realization that he was trapped in hell on earth. Being locked away in solitary confinement for over 2 years was absolutely devastating to Khalif psychologically. Not to mention that the corrections officers was constantly playing mind games with him. Khalif stated that the guards told him they were going to break him down, and one way they went about doing that was by not feeding him. He said if you made the guards mad in any way, they would get payback by skipping your breakfast, your lunch, or all 3 meals for that day.
Yeah, I can see that. You piss the guards off, they won't even feed you. But the hardest thing I think about doing time for him, he didn't even know, when he's getting out. He didn't know none of that. He's just sitting in there, not knowing nothing. That part's got to kill somebody.
Khalif said that the longest period that he was starved by guards was for 4 days. COs wouldn't allow him to take showers for weeks at a time, along with other hygienic needs, doing everything that they could to break his spirit and make his life hell.
In solitary confinement, they control your food and how much food you get, and when it's time for feeding, they give you your food. So if you say anything that could tick them off in any type of way, some of them, which is a lot of them, what they do is they starve you. They won't feed you, and it's already hard in there because if you get the 3 trays that you get every day, you're still hungry because I guess that's part of the punishment. So if they starve you 1 tray, that could really make an impact on you. And
how much were you starved?
I was starved a lot. I can't even count. But the worst time I was starved is when they starved me for.
I got one challenge for you. Try whisper flow one time, and I promise you'll understand why I
4 times in a row.
I couldn't even imagine that. Because I remember when I was in jail and in prison and I went to the hole, man, I was starving just with regular trays. Because, the food sucks. You might get a tray and, you can't even eat 70% of it. You're going to eat like the cookies. There's been times when that's the only thing I ate off the tray. I took the cookies off of it. You get 2 cookies. Take them cookies and then throw the tray out. So not eating nothing, shit.
He began to act out in protest of how he was being treated, telling guards that he might do something to himself. He would tell them that he needs to talk to a therapist because of all the pain and the anguish that he had to hold in inside. But the corrections officers would refuse, and whenever they caught him in the act, instead of getting him proper mental health care, they would rough him up instead. Khalif felt like he was never going to leave Rikers Island, and his entire life was passing him by. He missed his junior and his senior year of high school, along with his sister's wedding and the birth of his nephew. His mom, Benita, would come to see him on every visitation day, trying to keep his spirit up, telling him everything is going to be okay. Khalif would open up to her about some of the things he was forced to endure and witness during his time at Rikers. His mom would...
What I don't get is, when you're locked up and a guard treats you wrong, they got a special paper you can ask for, and it goes straight to the warden. I forgot what it's called, but inmates fill it out, and you can you can say if a CO ain't doing what he's supposed to be doing and stuff like that. And it's supposed to go straight to the warden. I don't know why he didn't fill one of those out. Probably did though.
Tell him to try to stay away from certain people and avoid fighting, but he would tell her that he didn't have a choice, that he had to fight. It was his only way to survive. Benita stated that she could tell the circumstances were breaking Khalif down and she was afraid for her son. But after being locked up for 2.5 years and having dozens of dead-end court dates with no resolution, Khalif would finally get the opportunity that he had been dreaming about, the chance to go home and reunite with his family. He had a meeting with the prosecutors who proposed a simple deal: plead guilty to all of your charges and you can go home today with the time served. But something in Khalif's soul was telling him that this wasn't right. He knew that he really wasn't guilty and thought about how many people this has probably happened to before and how he couldn't let it continue. Khalif believed that if he took the plea deal, his story would never be told. He would just be another statistic, and the corruption in the New York justice system would continue to run rampant. But by rejecting the prosecutor's deal, his time at the infamous and extremely dangerous Rikers Island would continue, extending his time at a place that felt like hell on earth. By this time, the man who accused
I ain't gonna lie. If they would have gave me that deal, I probably would have took it. Because when you're in jail, man, sometimes you'll take a bad deal just to get it over with. I probably would have took it. I ain't gonna lie.
Kalief of robbery had relocated back to his home country of Mexico. He did conduct a telephone interview with Billboard magazine, stating that they decided to move back to Mexico after the incident with Khalif because they were scared of black people and felt like they were following them. The physical as well as mental attacks by guards and other inmates would continue, but after spending over 3 years in prison and losing hope on ever getting his freedom back, Khalif got a surprise at one of his court dates. The prosecution stated that they didn't have enough evidence to continue with the case, and the judge set him free. There was no real explanation given for what had happened, no apology. He was just
That's
set free,
crazy.
placed back into
That's
society
crazy.
after.
So probably the whole time they never had any evidence against this guy. They were just waiting it out in hopes that he would, take a deal, a plea deal or something. That's what they were hoping. And, he never broke. That's crazy. A lot of people would have though. Got charged for something you didn't even do.
After missing 3 years of his young life, Khalif struggled with mixed emotions after being released. He was happy to be reunited with his family, but angry about the time that had been taken away from him. He vowed to get his story out to the public in order to raise awareness about the urgent need for prison reform in the New York justice system, especially when it comes to their handling of teenage offenders.
I spent 3
That's only halfway. That's only half the story. I think he actually got out. Now this is halfway. His story's only halfway over.
New Years in there, 3, 4 of my birthdays. I spent a lot of holidays in there.
20-year-old Kalief Rou Rauter may be physically free, but mentally he is still trapped behind bars on Rikers, where every day was a battle to survive.
It's very hard when you're dealing with these dudes that's wild, tall, and they're big, you know what I'm saying? And they got weapons and shanks, and then they're in gangs. And if you don't give your phone call up or you don't give him what he wants, they're gonna jump you because he got about other 15 other gang members. It's very scary. It was like hell on earth.
I'm not gonna lie. By him saying that, I know they were bullying him. They was taking his phone calls and stuff. I know they was. Cause when you're in there, you get like 2 free phone calls. It depends on where you're at. Every place is different. But sometimes they give you like 2 free 15-minute phone calls. So you just got to pay for them. You can call your family and stuff like that. Now, if you use your free calls, you're gonna have to wait till next week till they refresh. But if you can get another inmate's free phone calls,
I must have took about 4 or 5 trips to the box to solitary confinement, and it wasn't easy. I practically lost my mind, and I feel like I still lost my mind. Like sometimes, I feel like I have screws loose. Like I'm never gonna be the same.
Goes by, puffing all out, hoping that it gets me high. Gotta make it go crazy.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Bonita Browder spoke about how her son Khalif struggled to readjust to the free world. She said on multiple occasions she looked outside of her home and seen Khalif walk into each corner of the driveway. He was used to walking that same pattern after spending 800 days in solitary confinement. It would be a long road before Khalif was back to his old self, but his mom and siblings were there to support him every step of the way. His family
I'm not gonna lie, getting out of prison and stuff after you've been in there so long, it does mess you up. Like it does. I remember when I was getting out, I was thinking the CO was gonna come around the corner, to take me back. But you're just extra paranoid about everything. Like I've been out for maybe like a year and like 7 months, and I barely leave the house, and that's by choice. So used to being in one room, it's crazy. It messes with your head. It really does.
He filed a $20 million lawsuit against the city of New York for his wrongful incarceration. Initially, they were told that they didn't have a case because a civilian was the one who made the claims that resulted in the charges, meaning that the city wasn't responsible for what happened. And as far as the physical attacks that Khalif was exposed to during his time at Rikers, he allegedly was connected to a blood gang in his neighborhood, and when he got to Rikers, he told them that he was going to be dropping his flag, which made him a target for the gang. Khalif and his family would deny these allegations, saying that it's just an excuse for the city not to be held liable for what happened to him at Rikers. But he had something powerful on his side.
Yeah, that's crazy. When people go in there just to join gangs and stuff, for protection. A lot of people do it for protection or just because for like a sense of belonging, like a family or whatever. They realize it's not what they want, and they try to back out, but it's sometimes not that easy. They'll come after you for that shit. But a cage is a cage, and I never leave the house either. Yeah, it really messes with your head.
The public awareness in regards to his case was starting to grow. He was making appearances on major news outlets like ABC News, The Huffington Post, and The View, where he made friends with one of the hosts, Rosie O'Donnell, who said that she wanted to keep in
That's
contact with
crazy.
Khalif to make sure that he was
I'm sorry for pausing so much, but imagine that he did like 3 years and he got out and like he's famous now. I ain't gonna lie, I'd probably do 3 years if they told me I was gonna get some money. I don't know if did he get the money or not. I don't think he did. I think they said because the state they said because it was a civilian that did it or whatever. But still, he's famous. He's probably making some money.
okay. He would also gain support from one of the most famous people to come out of New York City, Sean Carter, aka Jay-Z. He read an article in the New Yorker magazine about what he went through at Rikers. He decided to reach out to Khalif. Jay-Z encouraged him to continue to tell his story, as well as offering resources to assist him in his crusade for justice.
He could have
Khalif
made
was
he could
excited
have did a
about
book.
having the opportunity to make a positive impact on the criminal justice system, so nobody would have to go through what he did. And with the support of his family, he was starting to get his life back on track. He got his GED, then enrolled in the Bronx Community College. The director of the school, Kimberly Pyam, took Khalif under her wing, being fully aware of what he experienced at Rikers. She was assisting him in his pursuit of his degree and said that he was a very smart and intelligent young man with a good heart. Khalif was gaining support from all over. The more his story spread, the more people were outraged. They couldn't believe that a 16-year-old had been exposed to such brutal conditions and sent to such a violent place. Khalif said whenever he would walk through his neighborhood, people would say kind things and give him words of encouragement, saying that everything was going to be okay because they knew he had a lawsuit against the city and he was probably going to be receiving a substantial payday. But for him, it wasn't about the money. He could care less. It was about the psychological toll that spending 3 years in hell did to his mind. He said he believed that it changed him forever, and no matter what he did, the scars he endured would never heal. Khalif stated in an interview that even though he was only 20.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. We're coming home. People be having trauma and stuff, and it'd be hard to talk about because when you're a guy, you try to you want to be a man or whatever. You don't want to be complaining about stuff or seem less of a man. But yeah, going like seeing people get stabbed up, seeing people like self delete and all that, OD and all that, it really does get to you. That's why YouTube was a good outlet for me. Coming on here and hearing about other people's prison stories, it encouraged me to share mine. You know.
22 years old, he felt like an old man who had already lived 3 lifetimes. Khalif was fighting an internal battle, a battle for his life, and it seemed like the war would never end.
you know, deep down, I'm a mess. I feel like I'm a grown old man.
When he first came home, he would just walk the four corners of the driveway.
You hear animals do that have been confined to a space.
Yes, he did it. And I had to watch my baby go through all of that.
Judge, she was trying to give me time served, and I wasn't taking it. And she told me if I lose trial, I could get 15 years. Just take the time served, and you go home today if you say you did it. I didn't do it. I'm not saying I did that.
He went back to jail. In June, he was suddenly freed with no explanation.
No apology, no nothing. They just said, oh, case dismissed. Don't worry about nothing. Like, what do you mean don't worry about nothing? I just took over 3 years of my life.
His mom, Vanita, as well as his siblings, supported Khalif through his mental rehabilitation. His mother was there for every therapy session, but his mom knew about the internal battles that he was struggling with, facing the demons of Rikers Island. Vanita stated that she had to stop Khalif on multiple occasions from putting himself in danger, and at times dealing with the situation made her feel helpless. He spent time in the psych ward at St. Barnabas Hospital not far from his home in the Bronx, as well as the Harlem Hospital. When Khalif did his interview for the New Yorker magazine, it was with a reporter named Jennifer Gonnerman, who kept in contact with the family. She said that when she went to visit him in late 2014, she could tell that he was in a bad place and struggling mentally, not only from the pain that he endured at Rikers, but also...
You know, it's crazy. I wonder, like, I already know what happens to this guy. You know, he self-deletes. But you think anybody ever tried to, like, help him? You know, maybe he was in his house and he didn't reach out for nobody. I wonder if anybody could have helped him. It's kind of sad, you know?
Also from the financial struggles of trying to attend college. In late 2014, he stopped attending classes because he knew he wasn't going to be able to continue to pay his tuition. Even though he had a 3.5 GPA, he had no choice but to drop out, despite having a massive lawsuit looming against the city. Until it went through, his family was still in financial straits, but an anonymous donor stepped in and paid off Khalif's tuition. This gave him motivation to continue to pursue his degree. It seems as if from the moment he came into this world, the odds were stacked against him, and he experienced things that nobody should have to endure. But through it all, he was still in a position to succeed and strive in life. However, the constant night terrors of what he experienced at Rikers, the place he called hell on earth, would continue to haunt him for the rest of his life. His mom told a story about him getting into an argument with one of his brothers about something minor, and it turned extremely physical. She said that he apologized by saying, "I'm sorry. I had a flashback like I was back at Rikers. I had to fight."
Yeah, I agree with that. They might have tried to, like, you know, help him a little bit, but they couldn't relate. You know, I can understand that because when I came home from prison, you know, I try to talk to people. Talking to somebody that's never been through what you've been through, you know, that's probably it's kind of like a soldier going to war and coming back and trying to talk to it with somebody that's never went over there. You know, they can hear you, they're hearing your words, but they don't know what you're really saying. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Protected me. I'm by myself. And there you have to fight for the phone. You have to fight to be able to sit at the table. You have to fight for people not to take your commissary. You have to fight for any little thing.
The anger, isolation, and
Hey,
brutality.
hey, he's not wrong about that. I'm not even joking with you. When I was in there, I seen people that didn't do nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. They just looked weak, and you know, groups of people took advantage of that. It's crazy.
Endured in jail would stay with him long after he went home.
This is how he releases his anger.
Weighing heavily on his friends and family.
And when he thinks about Rikers, he gets really upset.
Who was Khalif before he went to Rikers?
He was a normal kid. He was a teenager.
And when he comes home from Rikers, who is he?
Soulless. He wasn't the same anymore.
When he came out, he was not the same. There was too much baggage he brought from Rikers with him. The memory of beatings, starvation. There was times when he wasn't even allowed to take a shower for 2 weeks.
That ain't nothing. That ain't nothing.
She also spoke about him
I done told this story a couple times on the channel. Man, I'll tell you, when COVID happened, COVID-19, They came in there and they locked everybody down, and they didn't open those doors for 30 days. No shower, no phone calls, no nothing for 30 days. Now that's something.
Posting a series of erratic messages on Facebook, saying things like he needed to talk to her because he had left outside the gate, and now the people after him was saying that he was in trouble because he didn't listen. In May of 2015, Khalif got a disorderly conduct charge after having an altercation with a man in his neighborhood. He was scheduled to appear in court the next month, but the thought of going back to Rikers Island put him in a state of inconsolable despair. And on June 6, 2015, while at home with his mom in the Bronx, she said that she kept hearing a banging noise coming from the side of the house. She had no idea what it could have been. After stepping outside to see what could have been making the noise, she looked up to the second story of her home, and that's when she saw Khalif. Police said that there was no signs of foul play, and that
Damn, that's crazy. So he did that because he was going to have to go back to court, and he was afraid of going back in there. They didn't say that's the reason on the other documentary, but that's crazy way to look at it. He's so messed up in the head. He thinks there's a possibility that he might go back in there, so he just self deletes.
it was done by his own actions. He used an air conditioning cord. Khalif's death was a devastating blow for his crusade for change and reform in the criminal justice system, something that he was dedicating his life to. Just prior to him passing away, he had to write a paper for college, and the subject that he chose was the inhumane practice of solitary confinement and the devastating long-term psychological effects that it can have on inmates put in such extreme isolation for long periods of time. Khalif's tragic passing put even more spotlight on his already highly publicized case. His mom took his death extremely hard. According to his siblings, she blamed herself for not having the initial $3,000 to bail him out of jail, believing that if she could have just paid, all of the heartache and pain Khalif endured could have been avoided. But she vowed to keep his legacy alive by continuing his mission for change in the criminal justice system. Benita never planned on being an activist, and she didn't want to be in the spotlight, but she knew that she had to do it for her son. She worked with Jay-Z on a documentary dedicated to Khalif's life and the unimaginable brutality he faced during his time at Rikers Island, called Time, the Kalief Browder story. But before the documentary came out, Benita Browder passed away on October 14th of 2016, just 5 months before its release. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but if you ask Khalif's siblings, she died from a broken heart. She never got over the grief of losing her son. Miss Browder passed away at only 63 years old.
That's sad. That's sad. This guy's story is pretty good. Whoever recommended this, it's got some interesting things.
And I know you were the one who actually found him.
Yes, I was home alone with him, and we had a little discussion earlier, and I was at a loss as to what to do. I didn't know what to do, how to really, help him, because he became very paranoid, very paranoid. I tried talking to him, so he went upstairs, and I was just laying on my bed, and he came in. He said, "Ma, that was his thing. Ma, you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." He went back upstairs, and I hear all this moving. Then all of a sudden, I hear this loud noise, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" A child and threw his brother's TV out the window.
That's crazy. So he came downstairs and asked her if she's all right, and then went upstairs and did it. That's crazy. I wonder if he left a note or anything. They didn't say anything about that.
But I said, he can't, because there's bars. So I said, wait a minute. I go upstairs. I went in his brother's room, nothing. Then I went in the other room, and that loud noise was his body banging up against the house.
She could never recover from it.
It sounds like she died of a broken heart.
Yes, she did. Absolutely. I tried to get her help as much as possible. I did. I tried so hard, even offering to, be with her during any session. I tried really really hard. Sorry, I try so hard.
Imagine being able to build anything just by
Oh.
thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation.
In January of 2017, the city of New York reached a $3.3 million settlement
What?
with the Browder family. But
So he got the money after he's gone? That's crazy. So like, his family's living good off of his money he suffered from. That's wild. So that like all that it messed him up in the head and he self deletes and then he gets his money. It's crazy.
they did run into some issues. Khalif's adopted father, Everett Browder, who had been kicked out of the family home by Benita years prior, but she never divorced him and wasn't much of a father figure to Khalif, lawyered up and got involved with the settlement, saying that he was entitled to compensation. A legal battle would ensue with the family over the money, but ultimately the judge would rule that he is entitled to compensation due to the fact that he was the spouse of Benita. He was next in line. But the sacrifice that Khalif made wouldn't be in vain when he decided to reject the prosecutor's guilty plea in exchange for his freedom, extending his time at Rikers Island so his story could be heard and someone else could be saved. New York would ban solitary confinement in all jails citywide. They also passed a bill called Khalif's Law, guaranteeing that defendants get a speedy trial and doing away with the cash bail system. One of the main reasons for the extreme overpopulation at Rikers Island, Khalif's brother Hakeem would run for mayor.
Yeah, the prison system it will destroy some families, man. Cause fighting over the money and stuff like that. I couldn't even imagine. They're not even worried about. They probably miss them, but they're probably worried about that money. Just like the dad coming back in the picture just to get a piece of the pie. That's crazy.
With his key points being criminal justice reform and shutting down Rikers Island, resulting in the mayor Bill de Blasio announcing plans to have the Rikers Island facility closed down by 2027.
If I would have just been played guilty, then my story would have never been heard. Nobody would have took the time to listen to me. I'd have been just another criminal.
It's not hard to imagine the life he might have led if he had made it.
I have the medal hanging on my bed.
You see it in the remnants of the life and the people he left behind, like Elizabeth Payams, a program director at Bronx Community College who worked closely with Khalif.
Granted his associate's degree.
She says she's working on getting Khalif his associate degree posthumously.
It's for you. Thank you so much.
Khalif moved so many people. I just felt compelled to meet with him. I believe our prophets come in
Jay-Z?
Many shapes and forms.
Hey,
sometimes our prophets.
Jay-Z, he's I heard that was it Jay-Z? It's a couple rappers that try to bring awareness to the prison system. I think there was a prison system in Alabama that had harsh conditions where like they were stopping diabetics from going to get the diabetic shot. Some of the cells were flooded and all that, and there was a rapper that was bringing awareness to all that. I thought it was Jay-Z.
Prophets come in the form of
Snoop Dogg
young,
too?
undeveloped energy
I didn't know that.
will teach all us grown-ups how to love better and have more compassion. And Kalief Browder was the prophet.
Most people who learn about Khalif's story may view him as a victim, but he was actually an inspiration, a catalyst for change, who sacrificed himself in order to save others. And Khalif Browder, he was only 22 years old when he died. Rest in peace, King.
Well, that was a good I wish they would have went in details more about his case and stuff, but it is what it is. Yeah, Snoop Dogg, he tried to get Chucky Williams. He tried to get him off the death penalty, whatever, but who was the governor? Arnold Schwarzenegger? He wasn't gonna let him go. I think he would have helped a lot more people, He He was writing books and all that. He was helping young people. He was telling young people not to join gangs. This is the leader of the Crips, and he's telling people not to join the gangs and all that. And, people were listening to him. So I think Arnold Schwarzenegger made a mistake when he let that execution go. Yeah, he wrote a whole bunch of books, whole bunch of books. Like I told you I was running the Crips back when I was in prison and stuff, even before that. And like when you're a part of organization, you gotta like know all that stuff. Like basically, I had to do like history on his whole life. It's crazy. I had to know everything about that man. Yeah, he was helping young kids. He really was. He was writing children books, and he was getting gang members off. He was getting gang members to drop their flags and everything. Yeah. Hey, we need the next reaction video. We need some suggestions. So who was it that it was Hound Mom who suggested this case right here. But if any of y'all got some suggestions, leave a comment for the next reaction video we do. There was a temporary peace treaty between Bloods and Crips back then when all that happened. Yeah. It's crazy when I was in locked up, we had flags tied with the Bloods because you had the BGFs, the Black Gorilla Family. They were so big, like they there was so many of them. They were like an army because all the people that get in trouble in Baltimore, they come to the prison, and most of them are gonna be BGF. There's so many of them. They were taking over. And like if you were any other organization, you couldn't do nothing. They were buying up all the weapons on the tier, just in case they got into a war with anybody. The other side would have less weapons. You know what I'm saying? They were offering people K2. They said, "Hey, we got $20 worth of K2. If you bring us a weapon, we're gonna trade." So they were trying to get all the weapons off the tier. Maybe on San Quentin for the next reaction. Oh yeah, yeah, we can do that. San Quentin. Yeah, San Quentin, you hear about that all the time. And Pelican Bay, I was locked up with a dude. He kept on trying to brag that he was locked up in Pelican Bay. There was no way. Yeah, but San Quentin's one of them places where you hear a whole bunch of horror stories. I wish I could interview somebody that was in San Quentin because I heard some crazy stories. You know, yeah, it's a supermax, just like Red Onion. I don't know which one you think is worse, Red Onion or San Quentin. Well, I think in San Quentin you get to come out your cell because I remember seeing the documentaries and stuff, and they're walking the yard and stuff. They got the light blue shirts on and dark blue khakis and stuff. But in Red Onion in Virginia, they're 23-1. They don't come out at all. Even the kitchen workers, if you be good, if you got good behavior, they said it in the documentary yesterday that they'll let you come out 2 times a week to cook food and then go back to your cell. That's it. That's it. That's your life. You get to go out 2 times a week, go cook food for free, and then you just sitting in the cell. That sucks. I think Red Onion, from what I've seen, yeah, Red Onion is, yeah. I still got to try to get in touch with that Red Onion Randy guy. I had an interview today, right? And usually when I interview people, they usually have cell phones and stuff, right? It's a lot easier. But this guy, he didn't have a cell phone, so I was still going to do the interview, right? I was going to pre-record it with him. I was going to record our phone call, and then like I was just going to make a video and like put some jail background, something, put something background in it, some AI or something, and then let people listen to it. But he never gave me a call back. Maybe he's on lockdown. I don't know, because when you're locked up, anything can happen. East Coast prisons tend to be worse. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Because people on the West Coast, they be bragging about their prisons, how bad it is. It's like two different worlds though, for real. Because West Coast prisons and East Coast prisons is way different. It's just like everything's different. Like West Coast gangs, the Crips on West Coast, the Crips on the East Coast, two different things. Bloods over there, Bloods over here, two different things. You know, but over there, they're more racial. Like white people, they can't do business with black people or Mexicans or something like that. Oh, I forgot how it is over there, but it's racial segregated. And down over here in the East Coast, it's not like that. Like when I was locked up, I talked to Mexican people, I talked to white people, black people, and nobody's gonna say nothing. It's more like gangs down here. I remember going out and gangs would be separated. Like you would have like the Bloods over there working out, you had the Crips over there working out, and like I'm gonna tell you, the BGF were so big, they had a soccer field, and they were all lined up. And I'm telling you, it was like a fucking like 100 of them out there. Like the Bloods and the Crips had to tie flags. That's how big they were. And they didn't want anybody else to make any money. Like you had people putting out hits on other people and everything. It's crazy. Yes, really racial evening county prisons. Yeah. I wonder if it's like that in the jails too though. Like the jails and the prisons are way different. I wonder on the West Coast if the prisons are racial segregated. I wonder if the jails are too. Probably. I remember when I was locked up, I heard about a case that happened out there. A famous rapper. What was his name? I think it was like Skinny. It was Skinny something. It was like a Mexican rapper. They tried to extort him over there because he's Mexican or Spanish or whatever, and they got Spanish gangs over there, and he didn't want to play by the rules, and I think they stabbed him in the neck and killed him. I remember reading that when I was locked up in prison. I was like, dang, you know, it's crazy. But I hope you guys enjoyed the reaction, and for tomorrow, I'm just gonna be looking up like San Quentin. I'm just gonna go like that every day. I'm gonna do a different reaction video. Yo, I took a chance, right? And I did a rant. I did a rant video on The Boys because I talk about prison and jail and true crime on my channel. So I was like, damn, I like The Boys TV show. I was like, I wonder if I could put a video out because a lot of people say don't be mixing your content. Like you can't have a gaming channel and then one day be doing cooking on it. You know, they say not to do that, right? So I was like, man, I'm just gonna do it. I don't care. I did it. And, I think it's working out pretty good. He died also over that dumb shit. Oh, King Von. What you mean he died over that dumb shit? Over the jail? Racial? I thought King Von got he got shot by damn, what was that dude's name? Lil Tim? Yeah, the dude named Lil Tim over Quando Rondo. Yeah, that's what it was. Quando Rondo. I don't even know the whole story. I remember when he got shot. Man, he made some good music. He had his whole life ahead of him. Yeah, it's crazy. You would think if you start to get money like that, if you become rich, why are you still in the streets? Like I see some of these people, they be getting all this money and they still living in the hood. That's crazy. And then they wonder why they get robbed and stuff. Man, forget that. Don't even like give it a chance. Move the hell out of there. And it's crazy. Every time I do every time I get on the laptop and I come on here and I do a reaction video, barely anybody comes in the room. But if I get on my cell phone, I'll have like fucking like 50 or 60 people in there. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe it's the camera quality or something. I don't know, man. I guarantee you, if I were to go get on my cell phone right now, the room will fill up with like 60 people. But the whole time we've been here, there's only been like 9 or 10 people. It's crazy. I don't get it. YouTube is weird. I leave the gang, but still help them homes that had your back. Yeah, I mean, you be there for the people that are there for you. But like I tell anybody, you man, leave that gang stuff alone. Because at the end of the day, you got a lot of selfish people out there, and you won't know they're selfish, and you won't know their intent until it's too late. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, a person's always gonna look out for themselves. I learned that the hard way. I got locked up trying to impress all the wrong people, and after so when I'm in prison sitting there and I'm trying to call all my homeboys and they all declining my man. I was getting pissed off, man. I was like, damn, you supposed to be my homie, and you sitting here, you ain't got time to talk to me. It doesn't matter what time of day I call. You know, the only people that would accept my call was my family. Phone can go 4K, I think. I'm glad that I had people who stopped me from joining. Yeah, I tell anybody, the gang life ain't what it's cracked up to be. It really ain't. They glorify it, but there's nothing to glorify. You're basically working for somebody else. You're doing another man's dirty work. The rappers and stuff, man, they just be glorifying it all the time. I don't know why. You got some good people though. There been some good people that was in the gang that I met and stuff, but overall, they shouldn't even been in it. To be honest with you, they killed me before letting me join. They're cool friends. Yeah, I say if they did that, they gotta be cool friends. Cause the friends that just let you join, those are the ones you gotta watch out for. Yeah, but thanks for giving that idea for tomorrow, San Quentin. That's what I'm gonna look up something for San Quentin. But I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. Thanks for coming and watching. Thanks all y'all for coming and watching. We learn a little bit more each day, and I thank y'all for coming. I'll be back on tomorrow, 6 o'clock, and yeah, thanks for coming, guys. Remember, guys, stay out them streets and don't be going to jail because if you think they ran out of bids, they haven't. They got bids. They ain't never run out of bids. So please stay free. Yeah, but you guys have a nice night, man.